Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be restoring a cast aluminum motorcycle wheel. It'll apply to any cast motorcycle wheel or at almost any painted motorcycle wheel from the 70s or 80s. One thing I want you to do, I'm going to be working on this one. I will have the tire still on it and the bearings still in it. The bearings and the tire are still good. Ideally, you would remove the bearings and you would remove the tire. I've already completed the very important first step, which was I carefully sealed off the holes where the bearings were, the openings where the bearings were, and then I pressure washed this wheel to remove all of the loose paint and the dirt and the grease from it. As you can see, the wheel has been washed clean. We'll still be going back over black parts. The silver parts that are supposed to be shiny are dull and corroded. They've got some scratches in them and some pits. I'm also going to take the brake disc off and refinish these bolts and refinish this black area of the brake disc to match the wheel, which will now be gloss black instead of flat black. Not OEM completely, I know, but this is a custom, not a restoration. As with my previous polishing video, we'll be starting with 220 grit sandpaper, polishing the 600, then we'll go to 1200, and then finally we'll sand it with 2000 grit sandpaper. I'm going to show you more of the sanding and polishing steps this time. My last polishing video, someone suggested that I should show more, so I am. This is Mother's Mag and aluminum polish. I have a drill here with a wheel on it. I will turn that speed back up. I was using it for drilling. And then after I finish polishing and shining all of the parts that you see here in the silver, I will take some lacquer thinner and a Scotch-Brite pad and sand down all of the black parts and wipe the entire thing off with lacquer thinner. Then I will tape up all the parts that I have polished. Necessary, I'll trim the tape back where I have to, and then we'll paint this wheel black and you'll get to see how it looks. But first, let's get started with removing the brake disc. I've already flattened the retainers on the bolts. I have here a special tool I made for vapor blasting hardware. Now I 3D printed mine, but you can make one out of almost anything. You basically need threaded holes through it that you can screw the hardware into and hold it in place. This one is set up for M8, M6, and M5 screws. And it really works good. We have vapor blasting this hardware and restoring it to its original finish will be amongst the last things I do while the paint is drying. So I doubt I'll even show that step. Set the brake disc out of the way, somewhere safe. Like this box of parts down here. got the camera in position for a better look at the wheel. I'll go ahead and fold over the 220 grit sandpaper. Make sure it's clean, that there's no dirt or grit stuck to it from laying on the table. Then I will spray a little bit of WD-40 on it and start sanding. The nice thing about this, since I have to repaint the wheel anyway, it doesn't really matter if I skin the corners a little bit with this sandpaper. If anything, it's beneficial to the paint. You could also just wet sand this with water, but I like using WD-40. It seems to do better for aluminum that's going to be polished. Rat Intensive process. Make sure you get down in these corners, in these grooves, and that you get up on top here. After my last video on polishing, somebody said that I needed to show all of the steps of the sanding and not just the results in between each one. And I sort of understand that. Although in all honesty, being thorough with your sanding is more important than necessarily going for polishing anyway. More important, this is not wood, this is metal. While it does have a grain, when you're getting ready to polish it, your goal is to eliminate any grain, to eliminate any imperfection, and make it mirror smooth. So it doesn't really matter what direction you sand in. In this case, I'm just sanding lengthwise in a circular pattern around the edge, just because that is the most convenient way to do it. I have been polishing a fork leg. I open the sandpaper up like this and pull it back and forth across the fork leg. But there were also times when I also laid it flat on the fork leg, because you can't reach every single part. Now this will get your hands very dirty. If you're squeamish about the dirt or about the chemicals, by all means put on some rubber gloves. Definitely need to make sure you wear something over your eyes like I'm doing. Take your time. Make sure you cover the whole surface thoroughly with each step. When I get to the end, I usually like to go all the way around a few times in a continuous sweeping motion. It may not be strictly necessary. It just makes me feel better about it. Then I'll wipe this off right quick. Now it's time to do the spokes. What I'll do is, in order to keep up with them, I'll start right here on this side of the nipple, so I can keep up with where I'm at. In this case, it's probably easier to put the oil on the sandpaper. Be very thorough. The 220 grit is the stage at which you try to work out the defects. Minor scratches and imperfections. Unless you're a truly dedicated patient, you won't get it all done perfectly. So sometimes the scratches or the inclusions in the metal are just too deep. But still, let's wipe this off a second. And you can look at the spoke that I just sanded right here. And compare it to this one next to it. Even with just a 220 grit sanding, you can already see the difference. Let's continue on around the wheel. Now, if this were a stock restoration, I wouldn't be polishing these. I would stop after the final sanding, or if I had the wheel completely apart and all the bearings and everything out of it, I would simply chunk it in the vapor blaster, and when it came out of the vapor blaster, it would be done. When I do my own bikes, I love doing customs. That's my preference. That's how I got started. But I have done restorations too. And you take a wheel like this for restoration and give it a mirror polish finish, it's no longer a restoration, it's a custom. I see a lot of people do that. They polish their switchgear housings, they polish their fork legs, then they take it to a show. I wonder why it gets voted down, or why they only come in third place instead of first, even though their bike obviously looks much better. That's because it's not factory stock. I'm building a custom here, so I don't care. I want it to be a little bit too shiny. That's why I'm going to go with a gloss black finish on the wheels instead of a flat black. There are other ways to do it. Years ago, I worked at one of these custom V-twin shops, and the owner of that shop would take a wheel, like a Harley Fat Boy wheel, and he'd send it out, and he'd have the entire wheel powder coated. Then he'd come back and take a buffer with a Scotch-Brite pad in it and just knock the powder coating off the parts he didn't want coated, off the parts he was going to polish. I always thought that was a bit labor intensive, but that was his way. And it worked. You just had to be very careful. Man, these spokes look better already. This whole wheel is actually already looking better, except for the dull peeling paint. Circle back around the whole thing one more time. Kind of cover up the marks where I came up off the edge of the spokes. Like I say, I love doing this kind of stuff because you can see the difference quickly. That is only a 220 grit sanding. I haven't refinished the wheel or anything. It already looks a lot better. So now, let's switch up to 600 grit sandpaper. Let me check my camera battery. I don't want it to die on you. Okay, now we're on 600 grit sandpaper. Like I say, the same process all the way around. You want to do this way you get rid of your 220 grit sanding stretches. I'm sanding, getting down inside of these grooves too. As I said, for metal polishing, it's far more important to be thorough than to do it in any particular order. Once again, starting right next to the valve stem. I called it a nipple earlier. Hopefully I don't get a YouTube strike for that, but valve stem, air nipple, whatever you call it. Actually, valve stem is the correct terminology. Try to do this stuff, it might be too boring, which is kind of difficult. A lot of this stuff is slow, dull, boring work, which is why so many people don't do it. They don't take these final steps. You've got to get through the slow, dull work. Somebody has to do it. It always gets done. One thing I learned in my life, there's a lot of reward for being willing to do the other things, do all the things that other people walk away from and say, nope, I ain't doing it. I try to explain to young people, like, I had one job that I started, I was at the lowest paid mechanical job in the plant. But within 7 years, I was at the highest paid non-management job in the company. There's several secrets to this. One, of course, is being willing to do all the other stuff that people say that they won't do, that other people refuse to do. Another thing, one thing that helped me a lot, if you're working at a job, especially if you're working in a plant and it doesn't look like you're ever going to get ahead, I mean, these opportunities don't come up often, but when they do, you got to jump on them. The boss will show up at a meeting on Friday and say, I need somebody on a plane Sunday night to go to work Monday in Timbuktu, or in my case, Kingston, Jamaica, or Guadalajara, Mexico, or anywhere like that. Raise your hand. Get on that plane. Go to work. These things get remembered. Even if they don't help you at that job, you become a go-getter. You get to go places and see things. I will tell you, working as a private industry contractor is terrific. It's actually even better than being in the military. Traveling around, having an expense account. I actually miss it. The reason why I say it's even better being in the military, because most of the time nobody's shooting at you. Most of the time there's no reason for them to. If they are shooting at you, you probably wandered into the wrong side of town. All right, let's take a look at that after the 600 grit and see what it looks like. Normally I wouldn't wipe it off yet, I would just keep going. There we go, that looks pretty good. Just a little bit of sand and scratches left. You can see where the sandpaper was rubbing on it in some spots. Well, guess what? It should start to fade away in the next one. All right, there we go. I'm back. I have seriously enjoyed the GoPro camera. I have always used cheap imitation brands before, but I have one serious bone to pick with GoPro, and that's on the battery life, which is extremely short, even with the accessory endurance batteries. You know, we're on to our 1200 grit sandpaper now. Let's go thoroughly around this thing. You actually want to scrub it quite hard, even like you would if you were sanding paint off. All the way around in a few non-stop motions. Now, once again, we'll start next to the valve stem and work our way up. When we wipe it off this time, you should start to see the beginnings of some shine to it. One thing to watch out for though, you're actually sharpening these corners, so don't skin yourself. Keep it lubricated so the sandpaper doesn't load up with the aluminum, because you are literally removing metal at this point. As you can see, this is starting to look pretty good. It's actually got a little shine to it in spots, and that's just after the 1200 grit sandpaper. If I were attempting to do it stock without removing the tire and the bearings and vapor blasting it, this is where I would stop at. But that's not what I'm doing, so we'll go on to the 2000 grit sandpaper. you can go even further. I have done a set of engine cases and you did all of these steps plus 2,500 grit and then 3,000 grit sandpaper. And by the time I finished sanding, I could see myself in them, and that was even before I polished them. I'm not quite that serious on this one. It's 2,000 grit. Also, don't worry about using the WD-40 on the, me using WD-40 on the rubber. If that part bothers you, take your tire off. WD-40 is actually beneficial for rubber. This is a long, slow, drawn-out process. I'm not really too good at the YouTube video thing yet. To me, some of my videos seem kind of boring, even the ones that do well. But I hope you can learn something, and I'll try to be more entertaining, as long as I don't have to bring in half-naked dancing girls. My wife wouldn't like that very much. And unfortunately, I put on an air of maturity, so all the people around here in the community that think I'm a really nice guy wouldn't think that anymore. They know I'm a little crazy when I'm riding a motorcycle. But they forgive me for that because they all speed like maniacs too. Well, except for 2 or 3 old ladies, of which mine ain't one. My wife is fairly normal. She hollers when I'm driving too fast, but when she's driving too fast, it's okay, because she's being careful. How we can get in here. I've already done the back wheel for this motorcycle. This one here might turn out looking much better. Oh well. If it does, it does. The back wheel still looks good. Now let's wipe that off and see what it looks like after the 2,000 grit sandpaper gets done. There you go. That looks really good there. Okay, now to give you an idea, check out this side carefully. See, it's pretty, got a little gleam to it. Now it's time for me to do the other side. So once again, I'll start over to 220 grit sandpaper. I'll fold it out so I can get to some fresh grit. And we'll go from there. By the way, while I'm finishing up the back side of this wheel with the last round of 2,000 grit, this might be a good time to mention that my online partner, We Bike Japan, has a replica of this wheel for sale on their website. Those of you who've been following the channel, or those of you who know anything about them, recognize this as the front wheel off of a Yamaha SR 500. So if you don't want to go through the trouble of restoring your own wheel, go to japan.webike.net and look for the Yamaha SR 500 cast wheels. Now, we've got both sides thoroughly sanded. Before we move on any further, we'll go ahead and polish this. Like I said, I will simply take like I said, I use Mother's Mag and aluminum polish. Everybody has their favorite. Rub it in good with the cloth. It's kind of runny right now. It's hot. It's like 33 degrees Celsius, 94 degrees outside here in the afternoon on the last Saturday of August. It's still very much summertime. That's why you'll hear all these fans running in the background. It's just too hot for me to be doing this much work without a fan blowing on me. Once again, so I can keep up with it, I need to start right here. Rub it in by hand till it starts to change color, and you can see it. But you're going to be doing the majority of your polishing with the drill, so. Now I'm going to be using this buffing wheel, buffing cone, polishing cone. On my drill, you want it set on the highest speed setting. These buffing cones like this are available at your flaps. If you're wondering what flaps is, that's short for favorite local auto parts store. And also at Harbor Freight, which is where I got these. You can order them on Amazon. There's 1,000 places you can get them. Now you can see we're already getting good results on the parts we've done so far. And there we go. It's all nice and shiny now. Everywhere you look, up and down. I will tell you one thing. If you're ever tempted to skip the sanding part and go straight to the polishing, don't bother. I spent an hour and a half sanding and spent a half an hour polishing on one side, which is far less time than it would have taken if I had simply started buffing it without sanding it first. At any rate, I got to flip it over now and do the other side. Hang around. Then I get done with that and we'll mask it up and get ready for paint. And here you see, we have both sides all polished up and shiny now. It looks good. Time to carefully go over it with Scotch-Brite paint thinner and prepare the rough cast black parts for paint. I'm not going to sand those because I don't want to remove the texture. Those parts are rough cast and they need to stay that way. Be right back and show you that step. Okay, have you made it through the video this far with me? Good, congratulations. I suggest that you are a glutton for punishment, and you should go look for our group on Facebook. Go to Facebook and look for the Gluttons for Punishment Motorcycle and ATV group. It's a unique group of masochist individuals who love to torment themselves with anything to do with old motorcycles. Boy, I got a fresh cut on my finger here. I didn't realize. And I just poured paint thinner all in it. It's enough to make a man say bad words. I used to be kind of wild. Now, I don't know if I've gotten more moral as I've gotten older, or if I'm just too tired to sin anymore. Go figure. Anyhow, when you're cleaning this off, you do need to make sure that you do not scrape over the parts that you've polished with the Scotch-Brite pad. Because if you do, you'll have to polish them over. But using the paint thinner and the Scotch-Brite pad, it removes any loose paint that's still attached, helps prep the surface for more paint. It also removes any silicone, waxes, and of course, mother's mag polish that you've left behind. Anything that will keep paint from sticking. I'm actually going to be spray bombing these wheels. You can do this. You can go mask them all off carefully, which I'm going to mask them off carefully. Spray them down with high-dollar urethanes. That works, looks good. And I would recommend that if you were trying to win some huge, super fancy 100-point show. Or you can just spray them down with some VHT flat black, or what I'm going to use, Duplicolor engine enamel in gloss black. It works. I painted dozens of wheels with it, and they all look great when I still got rid of the bike here later. Because most time when I'm doing this, it's for a bike that's for myself. Like I painted the wheels on my Honda Interceptor. Go check out the videos on it. I'll leave a link down below. It came out really well. The bodywork is done in cheap ass flat black. I mean, I wanted a real rat rod look with it. This way, getting all of the loose paint, grease, and polishing compound off of it. I had actually at one point even thought about removing all of the paint completely from these wheels. But then I photoshopped it. I wasn't too happy with the way that would look, so. But they were all just dull. They were just dull cast. With polished. So I decided to go with black. Cleaning all of the mag polish out of the wolf calf sections of this. There's a little bit of a paint. But overall it looks good. I'm also going to go ahead and go over this brake disc the same way since I'm painting the center of this. This actually doesn't look too bad. If I were just doing the wheel back in flat black, I wouldn't touch this. Take off one side. Wipe all of this, anything off of here that will interfere with the tape stick, you have to coat it clean. Your technique matters a lot when you're painting and restoring. A lot of things matter a lot. What takes precedence above everything else is preparation. Just like building an engine. When you build an engine, you want to clean off your work table so that it looks like an operating room. Granted, your whole shop can't look that way. If you're like me and you're collecting junk, I unloaded some fresh new art supplies. I mean, crappy old motorcycles off the trailer yesterday. Go ahead and wipe that tire back off some too. Yeah, I know I'm lazy not taking the tires off to do this. Hey, I'm already doing enough hard work as it is for nothing but my own personal satisfaction. Why not try to reduce it a little bit? Hey, that's looking pretty nice there. Still needs some paint though. But before we can paint it, we need to tape off the sections we don't want painted. One thing I will tell you, any place on your motorcycle where something mounts to it that does not have paint on it from the factory, keep the paint off of it. It'll mess up your mounting points. One of the things I used to, like I said, working at a little aftermarket B-twin shop, we built a few frames we had powder coated. And what we would do is everywhere there was a mounting point on a powder coated frame, and I would still do this even if I was restoring it, a vintage Japanese motorcycle with a powder coated frame. Everywhere there's a flap or something bolts onto it, you need to remove the paint from that spot. I'm going to do this first. I'm going to show you a little trick for masking off spots like this. So let me ask you a personal question. Have you ever been broke and working on something at 1 in the morning and all you needed a gasket? Of course, at 1 in the morning, all the parts stores closed. So you grab a cereal box, lay it on the part that you need, and you take a little small hammer and you tap around the edges of the part. And it cuts through the gasket material. You do it carefully, you don't want to ding anything. You just want to cut through the paper. That's how I mask off these little spots. There we go. Now hopefully you learned something from that. Yeah, since I'm not taking this one all the way apart, let me take off the valve stem. Here's a weird fact about these Yamaha SR500 rims. You're supposed to run an inner tube. Kind of a scary thought. Because of curvature in these wheels, kind of have to carry this tape section. I suppose if you had some better tape than what I have, it was really extremely flexible. But I'm just an old guy playing around in his own garage. Using the supplies on hand. Trying to take my bikes to shows and compete against people that have their own private mechanics and everything. Job going around all this. Part of my problem is in this 95-degree heat, if I drip a drop of sweat, then I have to go back and wipe it off. Good sharp hobby knife. I know that there is thin line masking tape made. I actually have some here. I would still have to trim it down this way because it's just a little bit wider than these folks. In that case, this is just so much easier to do. This is such a slow process. Why don't we just warp speed through it? It's a minor league pain because if I drop a drop of sweat down on the table, oh my goodness, Mr. Finch, you're so cheap. You're sharpening a hobby knife blade. Well, with inflation being what it is nowadays, you've got to save every penny you can. It's killing the motorcycle hobby too, the industry. I mean, lifestyle changes have been responsible for some of it. But the biggest thing that's the problem right now, people just can't afford to have fun. mean, a lot of young people aren't really into the risky kind of lifestyle, or into a more indoorsy lifestyle anyway. So that's had some effect on it. But the biggest thing is, like everything else, the sheer pure expense of just living makes it so difficult for so many people. But anyway, that's taped up pretty well so far there. That's an hour of my life I won't get back. I've edited a lot of this just to make it simple. Go ahead on to the trash can with the trash. That's the easiest way to do it. Well, that's actually masked off enough for me to spray can paint it without getting any on the tire. Right now I'm going to go in the house and get a little bite to eat, and I'll come back out and tape off the other side, and then when I'm ready to paint, we'll set the camera up in the paint booth. Well, if you're still here an hour later, I want to thank you for sticking around. I went through the trouble of putting all the detail and stuff in here because 3 weeks ago when I released my video on metal polishing, I had a viewer, Stu Brown 6903, said it would actually be better for me to show the steps and show the sanding and polishing. And the reason I had trimmed them out of that video 3 weeks ago is because it's such a long, drawn out process. So anyhow, I hope you enjoyed this video and you made it this far. Don't forget that my sponsor, We Bike Japan, this week has a special coupon code, WOPP, We Bike, our official partner program, that you can use to get 5% off your order. There are 2 brands excluded, PMC and Active, but anything else that you purchase from them, use the coupon code WOPP. Thank you for watching. In the next video, we'll unmask this wheel and reinstall it and let you see what it looks like. Thanks for watching. As always, comment, like, subscribe. I'm happy to take suggestions. You got something you want to learn about, something you want to see, just let me know in the comments down below. Thank you and have a great day.